Hello and welcome back to Humanizer, where I'm converting the MakeHuman plugin character creator, which is free and open source, into the Godot 4 game engine, which is also free and open source. So as you can see, I've got the clothing to resize with the Blendshapes now and the skeleton. And I downloaded a couple different outfits just so you can see, but you'll be able to download any of the assets from the plugin, and this process should work for the eyes and hair and teeth as well as the clothing. So it resizes with the shape keys, and it also attaches properly to the skeleton, so you can see that the animations still look right. And I still need to figure out some implementation and optimization details, but I just wanted to show you that it does work, at least the proof of concept. So I'll put a link to the download for the project in the description, and now I'll show you how I got it to work. Once you're done making your character model in MakeHuman plugin for Blender, you can then add the clothing and hair assets from the Apply Assets dropdown. So there's quite a few clothing options here, and you can apply multiple at a time. And you can add hats, and there's shoes, hair, and teeth as well. So there's quite a few assets available. And as you can see, I am using the new Blender 4 version. So if you go to the MakeHuman community page under the downloads and plugins, you can see there's the MakeHuman latest and then the MPFB2 Blender 4 nightly build. You can see the date.zip. So I grabbed that one and installed it, and everything seems to be working. So now I want to have these clothes available in Godot. So first I need to go to my config Blender 4.0 MPFB data, and here is all of the assets. This includes the assets that you've downloaded with the packs. So I have the default system assets pack. And in here are the clothes. So I'm going to copy the male casual suit, which should be pretty universal. And I wanted to just import the files from here, but Godot can't create the .import files necessary to open the PNGs and object files. So I do have to copy this into my game directory. So I'll make a new folder and add it to there. And then I'll let Godot import those files. Now I'll make a new 3D scene in Godot. And I can drag the OBJ directly into the scene. So it is larger than the human mesh that I generated, but that would be okay since we're moving the vertices anyway. The issue was when I tried to index it by the unique coordinates, the vertices were still at a different point than the Blender. So I think that's because one type is using the clockwise ordering and the other type is using counterclockwise face ordering, but I'm not exactly sure. And I could open the object in Blender and just export that, but if I use the make human, then it will be weighted to the skeleton as well. So that will be the most convenient way to import the clothing. But I can make a new surface material override, standard material 3D, and set the albedo to the diffuse.png and the normal and ambient occlusion as well. Now you can see that the sleeves and the neck are completely transparent all the way through. That might not be an issue if it's actually on the character, but if you want to get rid of that, under transparency, use disabled cull mode, and now you can see that the sleeves and that the inside of the model is rendered as well. And I can save this material in the folder. So now I'll go ahead and open this up in Blender. So I'll make a new human from scratch using MPFB. And under data, I'll just disable all of the shape keys. So you can see now this is the basis model, and you need to add the rig first. I'm using the mhclo rig, add standard rig, and now you can apply the clothing assets. So I'll load the male casual suit 4. And if you want to actually see the texture, you have to change the viewport shading. And now I'll go ahead and save this in the Godot project. So now in Godot, I can delete these nodes and drag the blend file directly into the scene, and right-click to make local. So I'll add the material to the clothing to make it easier to see. And if you go to the skeleton, you can change the bone rotations to see that the mesh, the clothing mesh, is connected to the skeleton. And you can use the animations from mhclo. So if I just copy the animation player from my skeleton builder, and set the root node, you can see that the animations do still work with the clothing mesh equipped, so that's good. But of course there are no blend shapes here, so I can't resize the clothing mesh yet. So instead I'll delete all of this and double click the close.blend to open the advanced import settings. So we'll want to save the closed mesh as a new resource. So select the close, enable save to file, and set the path to the resource. So now, once I re-import the blend file, it will generate a new resource just for the closed mesh, as you can see. So I can apply the material, and I'll go ahead and add the generated mesh. As well, set the material and reset the transform. So now you can see that they do line up. And once you've exported the mesh to the resource, you don't need to keep the blend file in your game project anymore. So that will reduce some of the resources, but I'm going to keep it just for example, and I can use it to quickly make my other clothing files as well as a template. So now I want to make the clothing mesh resize with the shape keys. And there's a mhclo file. It doesn't actually show up in the Godot file browser, but if I open up the project here, so there's a male casual suit for MH clothing file, make human clothing file. And in here we have some header information, and all of these are the vertices that are used to calculate the new position. So the first three numbers are integers, and these refer to vertices on the base human mesh, and the next three numbers are floats that add up to 1, and these are the weights to multiply the coordinates by. And the last three numbers are an offset to move the point further away from the human mesh. So I need to make a helper to import this into Godot and extract this array. So I'll make a new script extending resource called mhclo reader. And I'll add a variable for the vertex data. Then I'll add the init function, which will take the file name as a string. And I'll make a new variable from file access.open and pass in the file name, and we only need read access. Then you'll want to loop over all of the lines in the file. So use file.while file.getPosition is less than file.getLength. And I'll get the next line. and I'll just print that for now. And this should be reader. Now in the make clothes, I'll attach a new built-in script and add a variable Now I want to test this in the editor, so I'll make it a tool and I'll add the update variable equals false by default, and then I'll override the set function and call the onUpdate function. And I'll just print updating for now. So you'll need to reopen the scene, and now this should be an export variable. So now if I toggle the update, you can see that it's printing updating here. So this is working. And now I want to set mhclo reader equal to a new make human clothing reader, and just drag one of the files and change the extension. So now, hopefully, this will output all of the lines in the file. So I can see that it is able to read the file. So now I need to parse out the vertex data. So basically, I want to read everything after the verts 0 until I reach the delete verts. And this actually deletes the vertices from the human base mesh. And I'll show you why they have this later, but for now I just need to parse out this middle section. So in the MH clothing reader, I'll make a new enumerator for the section, and this will have a header, vertices, and delete vertices. Then when I read the file, I'll set the current section equal to section.header, and instead of printing the line, if the line equals verts 0, then current section equals vertices, section.vertices. Else, if the line is equal to delete verts, then the current section equals section delete vertices. Otherwise, if the current section equals section.vertices, so this will skip the first line since it's a continuous if statement, and the line does not equal an empty string. So you can see there's a blank line here that I'm just filtering out. Then I'll want to split the line into floats. So the string object has a split floats function, and this takes a delimiter, which is a space, and allow empty, which I'll set to false. And I'll just print the line array so you can see, but we'll also want to append the line array to the vertex data. So now in the make clothes, when I update, I'll set vertex data equal to an empty array, and update again. So now you can see it's made an array of the values for each line, and it's only processing the vertice data. So now I want to get the blended vertex position for each of these vertices, and I already have the logic for that in the skeleton builder. So I think it makes more sense, instead of copying this function over and over again, to make a new type of node. So I'll go ahead and make a utils folder, and then create a new script inheriting MeshInstance 3D, and this will be make human MeshInstance. And this will need to be a tool so that it works in the editor. Set the class name to make human mesh instance. So now I'll copy the get blended vertex position from the skeleton builder, and this needs the vertex array, and so the human mesh is referring to the mesh instance, so these can be called directly from here, but I'll need the vertex array and Blendshapes. So and mesh arrays. And get rid of the human mesh. So now this will, when the node is loaded, get the mesh arrays and vertex array, so it can calculate the coordinates of the vertex after it applies the blend shapes. So now I can change the human mesh instance to the make human mesh instance, which basically just attaches the script. But now in the make clothes, after it makes the clothing reader, I want to loop over the vertexes. So for v in vertex data, and then I'll get the index equal v at 0, so that will be the first element, and then I'll just print the human get blended vertex position at index. So if I update, you can see that it's now printing out the coordinates of the vertex index. So now I want to add the red dots at the coordinates just for debug. So I'll preload the red dot, which is just a sphere mesh. And this is from the vertex finder. And I'll add a node 3D named red dots to hold them. Now I want to reset this between updates, so remove child, red dots, then I'll make a new dots node equal to node 3D. And I'll set the name parameter equal to red dots so I can still refer to it. And I'll add it back to the scene as a child. Now I want to get the coordinates instead of printing them. So then I'll make a new dot variable equal to dot scene dot instantiate, and I'll set the dot position equal to the chords, and then add it to the red dots as a child. And I'll need to reload this since I added the preload variable. So now when I update, you can see that the red dots are scattered all over the mesh. They should be concentrated over the clothing, but that's because the clothing file is referring to the Blender indexes, so I'm just going to convert those in the clothing reader to the Blender to go.index. So I'll need to read the b2g index.json that I generated in the index vertices in build skeleton. So in build skeleton, I have a function to read the JSON. So I'm going to actually make a new utils resource that includes the load JSON function, so I can call it from anywhere. Set the class name to utils, and if you make it a static function, then you don't have to make an instance of the class. You can just call utils.readJSON. So we'll save that, and now in the make human clothing reader, I'll get the human blender to go.index, not to be confused with the clothing blender to human index, which we'll have to find in a second, and can drag in the file name. So now, instead of directly appending the line array, I want to convert the first 3 values to the new index. So Blender index equals line array at I, and Godot index equals human blender to Godot index at the blender index. And then I'll replace line array at I with G index, and since this will return an array, I actually want to just get the first value from that. I don't need all of the other ones. And then we can append the line array once it replaces the first 3 indexes. So now if I update the make clothes, and I probably need to reload the scene. So now if I update it, you can see that the dots are actually covering the clothing. So now I know that they're in the correct position. And when I change the shape keys on the human mesh and run the update, you can see that if I hide the clothes, you can see that the dots have changed with the mesh size because I'm looping over the blend shape values to get the position. So that's all working. Now I want to actually get the triangulated position from all 3 coordinates using the weights instead of just the position of the first index. So I'll set chords equal to an empty vector 3, then for I and 3, get the G index equals to V at I, and the weight equal to V at I plus 3. So that will offset it to get the weight. And then I'll use chords plus equals get blended vertex position at the G index times the weight. So now if I update it again, you can see that the dots are much more uniform since the mesh is made of quads. So it's basically a grid now. Now I want to add the offset, which is the last 3 numbers in the line. So in the script, I'll add a new variable called offset equal to a new vector 3 from the 6, 7, and 8 index, and I'll add the offset to the coordinates. So now if I update, you can see that clearly did not work, and they have been displaced too much. So if I look at the make human close file, there is an X, Y, and Z scale, but I didn't really know. Obviously, the whole numbers would be too big, and I expected them to be the same anyway because the original model is not distorted. It's not like really short and wide. So the scale should be the same for all 3 axes. And in the plugin folder, I did find the close service.py, and it looks like they are calculating the scale here by dividing it by the human vertices. So I didn't really know how to get the original values for all of that, but if you go to the data rigify or mhclo in standard, so this does have a scale factor, which is basically 0.1. So I used 0.1 for the blend shapes, and that seemed to work. So I believe this is the correct scale. So if I multiply the offset by 0.1000 whatever, and run it again, you can see that they are mostly in the same position as they were, but there's some definition around the edges, and like on the pockets you can kind of see the outline and there's the belt there, so it seems like the offset is working. And I'll go ahead and change that in the skeleton or the blend shape generator scale as well. So in the import shape keys, instead of dividing by 10, I'll set the shape key coordinates times the scale, and I'll rerun the import shape keys and generate shading. So that will be, it was probably close enough, but I think that'll be correct now. Now I want to resize the clothes instead of generating all these dots, so I'll rename the clothes mesh and get rid of all of the references to the dots. And I don't need to make a new clothes reader every time now that I've got the index figured out. But I do need to get the new clothes array from the clothes.mesh.surface get arrays on surface 0. And now when I get the chords, I want to first I need to get the index from this instead of the row. So I'll get the v index and then v data, or v equals vertex data at the index. So now that I have the index, I can set the new clothes array at mesh vertex index at the v index equals coordinates. So this will replace the value in the vertex array with the new coordinates. And now I want to make a new clothes mesh equals array mesh dot new, and I'll add a surface from arrays using primitive triangles and the new close array. And then I'll set the close.mesh equal to the new close mesh. And I need to reload. Okay, so now you can see that while it is the correct coverage, it's definitely not what we wanted, and that's because the offsets in the, so if I change the shape keys, you can see that it does resize, but the issue is that the closed mesh has extra vertices in it, and the MC clothing file is referring to, is in order of the Blender indexes for the clothes file, so I need to index the clothing file as well, the clothing object, and so I'll go ahead and make a close helper resource for that. So first I'll make a function to create the unique index in the utils function class. So in the import shape keys, I have the index vertices function. So I'll copy that and add it to the utils, make it a static function, and I'll just make this more generic. So I'll call it create unique index, and it will take a input array of type array, and I'll give it a keep values flag, which is false by default. So basically this strips the values from the dictionary indexes and just turns it into an array. But if you wanted to keep it as a dictionary, you could set this to true. So that will give me some more options. So I'll get rid of the vertices, change vertices to input array, and change this to unique values. And you can actually just return the unique values dot values instead of looping through it and getting each index. So if keep values equals true, return unique values, otherwise return unique values dot values for the array. And I'll change chords to value. So now it's more generic, and I can call it from anywhere. Then I'll make a new script extending resource for the clothes helper. Set the class name, and the initialize will take a path to folder, which will be a string, and I'll get the clothes name from the path to folder dot get file, which will just get the folder name if it's a folder path. So if you give it closegen / male casual suit, it will set the close name to male casual suit, and then I can make the file names from that. So the make human close file name equals path to folder plus a slash plus the close name plus the extension. So I need to make a new variable for the make human close reader and set the type. And now we'll set the reader equal to a new reader to the file name. Now I'll add a variable for the array mesh and set mesh equal to load path to folder plus mesh.resource. And I also want to get the surface arrays. And I'll set surface arrays equal to mesh.surfaceGetArrays. Then I'll set the close blender to go.index equal to a new array, and set the close index equal to create unique index from the surface arrays at mesh array vertex. So now I want to add a vertex data array, and we'll loop over this instead of the reader in the make close scene. So I want to set the vertex data size to the surface arrays vertex array size. And now I want to loop over all of the indexes from the mhclothing reader vertex data array. And you want to loop over the size. So I'll get the vertex data from the make human clothing reader at the Blender index, and then I'll get the Godot.index array. There can be multiple elements, multiple Godot indexes for each Blender index. So, and then I'll use the clothes B to G index that I got from the unique values at the Blender index. And then I'll loop over the Godot index array and set vertex data at the Godot index equal to the vertex data. So this will pretty much pre-index the vertex data from the mhclo reader, and then I won't have to compare it to the index every time I want to resize the clothes, so that should be more efficient. So this array has data for every single vertex in the Godot mesh. So now in the make clothing scene, I should be able to change this to clothes helper, and this will be a new clothes helper, and I just need to pass in the folder name. So now instead of the clothing reader, I'll use the clothes helper vertex data, which was the pre-indexed, and instead of using the clothes.mesh, I can use the clothes helper surface arrays. And it's probably a good idea to duplicate them. I think you pass a flag here if it should be recursive. And I need to reload the scene because I added the onReady variable. So, and it does work. So you can see now the clothing is correctly shaped. And if I change the shape keys, you can see that it still fits, which is what we wanted. So you can see that there is some clipping here on the calves and thighs. And I'll show you, I'll go ahead and import the female outfit so you can see it's a lot more pronounced there. So I'll need to copy the clothing data first. I believe that it's female casual suit 2. So I'll copy that into my humanizer clothes folder, and then I'll open up the clothes.blend for the male casual. So just unequip the first outfit, and you might have to select the human. So now it has the female casual, and you'll want to save as, don't overwrite the other one. Save it in the new folder, and now I'll let Godot re-import those. Once it's done importing, you'll want to double-click the new blend file to open the advanced import settings and save the mesh to resource as we did before. So this will be mesh.resource, or whatever you want to name it. It just has to be consistent. Now in the script in make clothes, if I change the clothes helper to female casual suit 2 and reload the make clothes scene, when I update, you can see that it has the female outfit on now, and so first I need to make a new material. You can see it's still using the previous one, so under material, make unique recursive, and then I'll set the albedo and normal and ambient occlusion. And I may want to lower the resolution on some of these, I don't know. So you can see how it's clipping through in the stomach because the female clothes are tighter on the mesh. So in Blender, they're actually using the delete vertices modifier to cut out the shape of the clothing. So if I hide that, you can see that they've hidden this part. And if you get rid of the modifier here, now you can see that it does have the same problem where it's clipping through the mesh. So that's how they worked around it. I don't necessarily want to do that. I don't think it would be a lot more effort. So instead, in the surface material, you can go to the grow option, and if you turn this up, you can see that it makes the mesh grow. So you want to turn this down. Even at 0.05, it's still quite large. But at 0.01, that looks okay. You can see that it's no longer clipping through. So just set that value at whatever it needs to be. Now I want to save this as a new material. In the folder, and in the clothes helper, I'll make a new variable for material, and set the material equal to load path to folder plus material dot resource. And in make clothes, I want to set the clothes material I think you have to set surface material override on 0 and then call the close helper.material to set the surface, So now if I change this back to male suit 4 and reload it and update, so it does change the outfit and the material. And I can go ahead and turn up the grow on the male outfit as well. So now I don't have the clipping problem. So now I want to copy the functionality from the skeleton builder into the make clothes. So I'll go ahead and set the class name for skeleton builder. And if I have make clothes extend skeleton builder instead of node 3D, it says that it can't find the base class. So the reason for this is I have a built-in script. So if I copy this and remove the script and then add a normal file script and save that, now this error goes away, and there's already an update function or an update value. So I'll just delete that and rename onUpdate to make clothes. Then I want to override the update function. So you can call the super to run the parent class update, and then I'll call make clothes. And now I'll want to copy the node tree as well. So I can replace the human mesh, and now I need to map the skeleton like so, and I'll hide the clothes for now. So here, instead of referencing human, I'll call the human mesh, which is defined in the skeleton builder. And if I reload this, so you can see that the skeleton builder is working. And if I show the clothes, since I changed the pointer, that's working as well. If I run the animation, you can see that the clothes needs to be mapped to the skeleton 3D, like so. And now the clothes fit the human. And from here, if I change the age or the gender, you can see that the clothing is not fitting, and that's because the skin needs to be reset. So you can set it to null and it'll fit, or if you instead set the clothes skin equal to the skeleton dot create skin from rest transforms. So use that instead. And now you can see when you change the gender and the age and play the animation, the clothing is still the right size. So now I want to change the clothes based on the gender. So in the skeleton builder, I'll add a new signal for gender changed, and I'll emit the signal in the gender set function. Then in make clothes, I can connect to the gender changed from the editor. So if gender is true, set the clothes helper to male, else set the clothes helper to the female. So now if I run this, it says there's an error calling from the gender change signal. The method was not found, even though the method is here, and reloading didn't help. So again, you just need to put the script in its own file is the problem. So I'll copy it, detach the built-in script, and make its own file. Now I need to reload. And when I change the gender, you can see that it does change the outfit as well. So this does not recalculate any of the shading and normals for the meshes. I will have to use the surface tool for that. And I'm not sure if it will be more efficient to actually generate the shape keys for each clothing, or to just calculate it when it needs to be changed. So I don't know if it takes up a whole lot of memory to have like all of those shape keys. So I'll have to look into it more. And the eyes and hair and teeth and stuff are also done using the same method. So I'll probably add all of those as well in the next video. But that's all for this episode. So thank you for watching and have a great day.